Hey, welcome back for another episode of Transform Your Workplace. I'm your host, Brandon Laws, and I've got my special friend and guest, Lacey Partipilo, with me. Lacey, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me again.
Well, today, I always love these where we find an article that says something meaningful, and then we sort of do a deep dive analysis on it. So let me just kind of set this up. This is a Gallup article that you found. You forwarded it to me. You're like, oh, we should talk about this on the podcast. The article is U.S. engagement hits 11-year low. And what they're highlighting in this article is that in 2023, 33% of U.S. employees overall were highly engaged, which means that they were highly involved or enthusiastic about their work and workplace, right? So that was the end of 2023 that stat was captured. But after the first quarter of 2024, the trend has gone downward. So it's now dropped 3 points to 30% amongst like full-time and part-time employees. And it's the lowest reported level of engagement since 2013. So given that, what factors do you think are primarily contributing to that downward trend?
I just feel like the workplace has changed. And I feel like we talked about this when the pandemic was happening, that we were predicting there would be this tail that, we're hunkering down for the pandemic. It's going to be really challenging. And we kind of have seen, I think about it in like 6-month increments. And as every 6 months has passed, it's been something different. I think where we are is still in kind of that tale of just employees are feeling uncomfortable about the economy, for one. So I think that has a lot to do with this. I think employers still have not completely figured out how to manage a workplace that is in many cases hybrid, sometimes fully remote. And I think well-being and just overall mental health for workers and physical health in some cases is challenging. So you kind of put that all in this melting pot, and I think it's a recipe for just employees to be frustrated, and employers are in a tough spot, I think, as a result.
Total disclaimer here, and it's funny because we've talked about this internally at Xenium a lot. It's like I'm kind of tired of like the new world of work and post-pandemic. Like I'm just kind of just burned out by that. But it is the reality of the situation that a lot of employers find themselves in, is that was a transformational time and work is no longer the same. And what's interesting about this particular article is it highlights that the data is showing a drop among employees working remotely or hybrid. So those people are less engaged and probably less happy. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, the article talked about the 3 groups that had the biggest drop: employees that are under age 35, so younger workers. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that many businesses and managers in general don't know how to manage the Gen Z workforce. They don't understand them. They have not built policies and processes that support that group of workers. And so that can lead to challenges. Also, employees that believe, whether they can or they can't, they believe that they can do their work remotely, but they're forced to work in person. Those folks are also seeing lower ratings and a bigger drop. And then those folks that are fully remote. And I think what we know about just employee engagement and satisfaction in general is that generally folks that work hybrid are the happiest. People that can, have reasons to come into the office that I think are purposeful and meaningful, connection, learning, ways where employees can come together and collaborate. Those are really important reasons to come into the office. If we're forcing people to come in to meet a number of days quota or an hours quota, or just you have to be in every single day because we're an in-person workforce and that's how we do things, you're going to have folks that are challenged, especially if those employees were doing the same work at home during the pandemic. There's those questions of, gosh, you trusted me before. I did what I needed to do. I delivered. I helped keep our company afloat during the pandemic. And now you don't trust me. And I'm losing some of my autonomy. I think that's a challenging policy to try to enforce. And that's going to lead to disengaged employees for sure.
It's like easy to talk out both sides of our mouth in this conversation, because it's like, okay, the data is showing people who are remote and hybrid are lesser engaged. And I think that's largely due to the fact that most employers, quite frankly, suck at connecting people's individual contributions to the wider purpose and mission of the organization. And the employers that do connect those, then people feel less isolated even in a remote work environment. Whereas right now, those that are crappy, like they're isolated and they don't know how their work is making an impact. And that's cause for disengagement. I mean, that, at least that's how I think of it.
I totally agree with you. And I actually think that speaks to this younger generation of workers too, that really do have a desire to understand how are the things that I'm doing, the day-to-day tasks, making an impact on the greater good of the organization. And sometimes even like wanting to connect it to the community, the world, like really having a big impact. And if we can't articulate that to employees, if we're not able to help connect the dots, I think, again, it's just more of that, noise that's going to add to dissatisfaction and disengagement for those employee groups.
What do you think the long-term effects of this downward trend in engagement is going to look like, not only inside of one organization, but what could that mean like societal wise?
It's a big question. I mean, I think about, just the clients that we work with, and we hear about productivity issues, turnover, challenges with just knowledge walking out the door, and just the issues that will create within an organization. I think too, customer service. So you think about an organization that produces a product. If we've got disengaged employees who don't care about the quality of their work, the product that they create, one, it's not done efficiently, so tons of waste. I think that could lead to organizations having to restructure. I think it could lead to organizations losing customers. So I think the competitiveness between, two businesses that produce the same product, that could get dicey in some situations. If our organization produces this widget over here and this group produces better quality with higher customer service because they've got happier employees, I better do something with my company. Otherwise, I'm going to go out of business. So I think, like on the extreme end of things, I think that this will create an environment where the strong organizations with high positive cultures and highly engaged employees, those are the ones that are going to survive. And toxic cultures that, don't hold people accountable, that don't create an environment where people are engaged and thriving and employees are taken care of, those places won't be in business anymore, honestly.
So it's interesting, like the stats are just showing kind of whoever took the survey, of course, like we're at 30% engagement levels, but there are some organizations, I know they exist, that probably have upwards of like 70% engagement or higher. What do you think those organizations are doing to have such a heightened level of engagement that the others aren't?
I think they're including employees in their planning. And to do that, you have to ask for feedback. So I think those organizations that have high engagement, they're doing annual surveys. They're looking at data to make sure that they're measuring, in some fashion, whether it's a survey like our What People Want from Work survey or some other type of satisfaction survey. They're looking at trends year over year and trying to move the needle and then doing something with the feedback. So I even think about, I had a conversation earlier this week with a colleague here. I'm working on an initiative right now, and wanted to get some feedback from actual stakeholders within our company that are going to use some of the tools that I'm building, and the enthusiasm that I noticed in that conversation. So these were not leaders here at Xenium, individual contributors that will receive the tool and have to execute on it, getting not only their input, but their buy-in. And what I noticed that was like, I wasn't expecting was this enthusiasm to actually participate in developing the tool. So I had people like, I can work on that. I've got some ideas for that. And then got messages afterwards about how, hopeful and optimistic they felt and how fun it was to be in a conversation about the future and the growth. So I think that's a small example of a little tiny initiative that I do think is going to make a big impact. And by getting people excited and enthusiastic, I feel like those people become champions for you. So you've got these little pockets of employees who are excited about your organization, excited about where you're going because they know that their voice has been heard and they see that you're like doing things to make the business better. They're going to spread that, right? They're like little mouthpieces for the brand. And I think that's important. That's externally and internally, right? Like getting other people excited and enthusiastic about it. So I think organizations that have high engagement do things like that. I think also having managers that act as coaches, so that can create an environment where there's supportive accountability, right? So we see people as whole people. We understand that, you've got kids, I've got kids, we've got lives outside of the workplace. But at the end of the day, there's accountability because we have a job to do, we have customers to serve. And so there are managers that are equipped and have been trained, super important to train your managers, that have been trained on how to provide that level of accountability. I think those two things for me stand out in terms of building a high functioning, highly engaged workforce.
Yeah. And I think like you honed in on like managers and leaders. And I think managers play such a huge role in engagement levels. And I've said this before in other podcasts, is like, I think there's microcultures within an organization due to managers.
Oh, for sure.
And that's why, like, I think it's so important to spend time on coaching and developing those managers, middle managers, whatever you want to say. Like, they're so important, and they contribute to the happiness and engagement levels of employees significantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's tools that you can use to examine those microcultures. So when you do surveys, breaking things out, especially if you're an organization that's large enough where you can still maintain the anonymity that's important in a survey, but breaking it out by division, location, department, that type of thing to look at those things. And then also by doing things like leadership 360s, like let's actually talk to the people that report up underneath this manager and that manager's peers to understand what's the impact that leader's having. And you can do that with, an individualized 360 or stay interviews where we're talking to people, focus groups. I mean, there are so many ways to gather this data. And I think, it's one thing to take the time to do that, but it really where the rubber meets the road is where we do something with that. Employees do, I think, more now than ever have an expectation that not only that we're listening, but also that we're executing on things that are important, or at least following up on, hey, here's what we heard and here's what we can do and what we can't do. And here's what the plan is.
So for listeners, you maybe just downloaded this for the first time and are listening to this. So Xenium, the company that Lacey and I both represent, we support like 400-ish small, medium-sized organizations. And a lot of them have employees across the United States. And we try to stay as plugged in as possible to like innovative trends and ways to engage employees, and of course, best practices and policies and procedures and all that stuff, right? Before that, though, we try to walk the talk with everything that we're doing. So a lot of times when we're talking about innovative engagement strategies and we might share a webinar on it, we've tried some of these things on our own, and we're talking about it. And Lacey, you're involved on our Excite team. That stands for Xenium Culture Inclusion Team Enhancement, right? So we have this acronym. This is basically a culture committee. And we've had this for as long as I've been at Xenium, which is 16 years. And same with you, right? We've tried a lot of stuff, like so many things. And it goes from recognition programs to like you just did the Take Your Kid to Work Day. All of these things are meant to have give people a sense of purpose and belonging and have some fun and build relationships. What do you want to say about that? I mean, like anything that maybe sticks out to you over the years that we've tried and even like it worked and we told our, consulted with our clients and said, hey, you should try this. It works.
Gosh, there's so much. Excite's like one of the best things about Xenium. And I was on it in the beginning, then I took a little hiatus and now I've been back for about 2 years now. Yeah, a year and a half-ish. So what's funny is I tell stories about some of the stuff that we used to do to our newer Excite team members. And I always get these faces like, like, I don't know that would work now. So I do think there's like, you have to keep evolving. It's not like a rinse and repeat. There are things that we have maintained year over year, like our annual Halloween costume contest and party. Like that's never going away. It's a huge part of the fun here. But I think really when I think about what we're planning and the activities that we're doing, the belonging piece is what's really important. So it's a way for people to connect with folks on a deeper level in ways that isn't just projects that they're working on or service teams for clients that they're supporting. And not everything is going to appeal to everyone. There were plenty of people that didn't bring their kid to work day, but there were still people in the office who either don't have kids or chose not to bring their kids that had a good time getting to know and meet the other, 20 employees that brought their kiddos as they were running through doing the scavenger hunt. So I feel like you have to try different things. Probably the thing that's stuck the best is our recognition program, our WOW card. So it's been a really powerful way for employees to, one, get to work with and know our core values. So I think we've talked about it on the podcast before, but Xenium's core values, really important to the work that we do. It's very integrated into, I would say, all of our people practices, but we've taken that and made it a program where employees can recognize one another for different behaviors that they exhibit that are tied to the core values. And then as you receive these wow cards, they actually used to be physical cards when we were in the office that people would handwrite. Now they're electronic because we've gotten with the times, we've automated the process, which has actually increased the amount of wow cards that we receive because it's easier to do. We've reduced some waste there. But when you get those wow cards, you can turn those in for fun stuff. So extra PTO, some Stoller wine, Amazon gift cards. I think that might be the most popular one right now. So it's just a cool way to recognize folks. And then we share those out loud in our monthly meeting. We read them. Like, there's something really powerful about having somebody read some recognition for you. And we don't read all of them because every month we get anywhere from 30 to 50 wow cards, which for a group of 90 employees, that's a lot of recognition. And we don't actually have to do a lot of reminders. People are pretty empowered to send those. And it's fun to read what other people are getting recognized for, because you don't always see the work that folks are doing. We don't have visibility to that. So it's cool to see, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this employee, we had a last minute check that had to get delivered and somebody got in their car and drove to a client's work site to make sure that employee got paid on Friday. That was really important. And they went out of their way to do that. How cool is that for us to be able to see what's happening inside the four walls?
I'm sure there's been times over your career where you just felt so engaged, and those are the best moments. I'm going to put you on the spot, but I'll go first. I want you to give an example of a time where you felt just so engaged and excited about the work that you do and connected. And I'll give you a recent example. I'm in marketing. Yeah, a lot of people know that who listen regularly, and I've done this show, and I find it engaging. But oftentimes when I'm, I know what our purpose is and I know what our mission is, but a lot of times I'm not connected to people like you who are actually doing the work and talking to the clients at the ground level. A couple of weeks ago, we went out to one of our clients, ICO, African Youth Community Organization, and we did a client story, and we went out and did interviews, and just the way they talked about their purpose and mission in the organization and community, and just what they're doing for youth. And then hearing them talk about how we, Kyle and you specifically on our team have helped them grow and get to where they want to go as an organization and helping people. That was so rewarding for me to hear. And it connected me to my work so much better. I felt empowered. I felt so proud that organizations would talk about our people and our company like that. I went home thinking I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I want people to feel like that. I know not everybody's going to have a job that they absolutely love and feel engaged, but if there's a way as an employer or a manager that you can help get your people feeling connected to the work and happy and have relationships, you're one of my best friends, Lacey, at work. Everybody needs to have a best friend, but you also need to be connected to the work and love what you do. I want that for everybody. And that was just an example of me feeling great. And I would be currently, I would be in that minority of the 30% that the Gallup said is engaged in their work. I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Yeah. That makes me choked up. That was such a good day. There's such good people out there at ICO. So I have so many moments where I feel like that. I mean, I feel like I'm doing the work I'm meant to be doing. So I think maybe something that stands out the most is I had an opportunity to go out to a client, actually also with Kyle, a different client. So shout out to Kyle, one of our HR VPs. And we got to do a tour at this client. It's a manufacturing client. And I have, most of my clients know, I have got a special place in my heart for the blue collar environment and just that industry. I think special people that get their hands dirty every day doing that kind of work. And we got to do a tour and learn about, what the parts that they make. And I just felt so connected to their why. And so I think it's kind of getting at what you're talking about, that I can see how the work that we're doing is having an impact. And like, I just left there thinking like, I was born to do this, like going out and connecting people and getting to see, this is another thing too. And I keep having these moments where, I've been doing this for a long time. I have had a lot of clients that were my client when I was their HR business partner, and they've slowly transitioned to other people on the team as my job has changed. And I get such pride when I get good feedback about the new HR business partner that the client might be working with. And so getting to see Kyle interacting with this client, seeing him out at ICO and like high-fiving and like hugging, and just like everybody just loved him. There's so many moments. I've had clients who've been like, Lacey used to be our person, but Michelle's our girl now. Like, I feel so proud of being able to support the BPs through the transition of taking over an account and have built tools to help the team with those things that I feel really proud about. And we just have really great people. And we also have like really amazing clients that do all kinds of amazing things. And so anytime I talk about it, I'm like, my friends are like, wow, why have you been at that company for as long as you've been? That's so many years. I'm like, I can't imagine doing anything else, because I have the best people that I work with and we support the best kinds of clients. So it's a really rewarding place to be.
Yeah, well said. And I think going like full circle on this conversation of like why there's so much disengagement. And I do believe it's because partly it's the work setup of any given organization, maybe not clear on their mission and vision, values and purpose, and ultimately connecting people to the work and having clear expectations and accountability around their job duties and making them part of the solution. I think there's so many ways that employees, managers, and employers can work together to make the experience so much better. So I would encourage like whoever's listening, HR professionals, leaders, take some accountability for the employee experience and work your butt off to try to connect people at the end of the day. I think that's what drives engagement.
I mean, it'll pay off like tenfold.
It totally will.
Employees will be your champions out there selling your services. They'll be, talking about why it's a great place to work. I had a client one time say, the ultimate goal is to have 2 lines out your front door. 1, people who want to work at your business, and 2, people that want to do business with you. And so that's always stuck with me. And I think you only do that by building an internal brand that employees can be excited about. And I think you do it in the ways that you just said.
Fun discussion, Lacey. Very important discussion. I imagine that we'll have to keep talking about this again and again. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate you. Where can people connect with you?
Yep. LinkedIn is a good way. I'm pretty quick to get back to people, so happy to connect with anyone that wants to.
Thanks for coming on, Lace.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode of Transform Your Workplace. The content on this show is strictly for general information and educational purposes only, so that you can go transform your workplace in a positive way. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the show are the guest's own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of either Xenium HR, the sponsor of the show, or me, the host, Brandon Laws. Additionally, Xenium HR or myself, Brandon Laws, doesn't endorse any guest, their business, or any organization they represent. So discretion is advised. We encourage you to work with a trusted advisor to find a custom approach that fits your organization's needs. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode.